Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. Good morning. I am your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, all the way from Canada. Jamie, we are 2 days out. We are 2 days out from Notre Dame versus Ohio State, the game that we've been talking about, thinking about for 8 or 9 months now. It's the kind of the thing that's hanging over everything that happens: the spring, fall, summer camp. It's the Ohio State game. 2 days out. What are your thoughts, man? How are you feeling right now?
I'm excited. I've been ready to go for a while. Like
Jamie's
this
ready to
is
strap up.
yeah. I don't know. I part of it is because the nature of this job, and part of it is just being the son of a coach and just someone who's coached as well too.
Yeah.
Is that you always kind of think of these games, especially when you're going into a game where you're the underdog, and you're going to have to play a specific way, and you're going to have to execute at a really high level to win. Maybe you're going to have like a couple of gadgets up your sleeve as well. I think when there's stuff like that, you're just, and especially when it's like you got months to prepare for it, you're ready to go. And I'm ready to go. I've been thinking about this game for far too long now, so let's play it.
All right, yeah. So I'm the kind of in the same boat there. I have a question. So when you it's game week, right? Like, do you have? I don't want to. I said ritual here, but it basically means like, do you have a certain kind of feeling like on game week? Like, okay, you start to feel like kind of butterflies, or do you feel like what do you feel like when the game comes? Because for me, it's like I know it's game week or it's like time to play when I start like searching out like old games on YouTube, right? Like people I've posted a couple things on Twitter about it, and people are like, are you okay? You're watching like 96 Vandy, the opener and stuff.
Yeah.
And so but do you do anything like that? Like, do you have any sort of ritual when it's game week like that?
Not really. I mean, definitely not searching up old games, man. Like, more power to you for doing that, Greg. But like, I mean, I'm, I guess my ritual too. I mean, in the season, it's a little harder because, um, you, you have the time is the enemy, right? Where you just don't only have so much time. Like, so next week, I mean, obviously there's going to be less on Marshall than there is on Ohio State because there's less time, there's less video. You're basically going off last season, but you're also going off of like, the first week and stuff like that. So there's that kind of thing that plays into it. But I don't know. Um I don't even know how like I guess it's like all like a daze to me because it's just like so much information that I'm like absorbing heading into it, and all I think about is basically like Ohio State, or like for instance like when they played Michigan in 2018. I mean, I mean, certainly like Florida State last year too, right? Like, I'm listening to like Florida State podcasts. I'm listening to like Ohio State podcasts. I'm just taking in as much from, and I'm like deleting it from subscriptions and never listening to these things again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of that kind of stuff.
So Ohio State fans are listening to podcasts too, because I posted a couple of keys to victory videos earlier in the week, and it's like boilerplate, like kind of like top 5. This is what I think Notre Dame has to do to win offense and defense and that sort of thing. And man, Ohio State fans, they found those videos, and they let me know about how they felt about it. And it's funny because those videos are not predictions, right? It's not something I'm predicting will happen. It's just like, this is what I think has to happen for Notre Dame to win, right? The likelihood of that is what it is, right? It's up to someone else. But to me, like, it's not very controversial to say if Notre Dame wants to win, they need to win up front on both sides of the ball, right? And people got in the comments are like mad about that. How can you say that? Blah 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 blah. So, I mean, I just thought it was really funny. But that's like, that's college football, right? Like no problem, right? Like it's
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with it.
I think and we were saying offline too, we were talking like if Ohio State loses this game, I mean, if Notre Dame loses this game, like there's going to be a meltdown, and there's a meltdown anytime they lose. I don't care who it's to,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter what happens in the game. I mean, there's meltdowns when they win, right? That's just the nature. That's fans. That's message boards, whatever, right? But if Ohio State loses this game, it's going to be a classic meltdown. Like
Yeah.
the fans are going to go nuts. They're gonna want Ryan Day gone, and it's ridiculous, really, to say that you could lose to a top 5 opponent or whatever, even if you don't want to say Notre Dame's top 5 where they with top 10, whatever.
Yeah.
Like you're losing to a good team if you lose this game, and yet somehow that'll be cause for and also you could still like run the table and win the playoff and whatever. But they're gonna have a classic meltdown if they lose this game.
What do you do for games? Well, how do you prefer to watch games, especially like big games?
Well, I mean, it's all work for me, so I
Right.
can't enjoy it. Like I can't enjoy the games. I'm not like I'm not hanging out with buddies and like getting wings. Wings are good, Greg. People enjoy wings during football season.
It's hard to work with wings because it's all over your fingers.
I know. I mean that's why I could even eat them because I'm typing at like most of the game. Because I have to do like live stuff on ISD, and then I'm getting stuff ready for instant reactions and got to get ready for the post game show and all that kind of stuff. So it's usually just me. Like I would. It's just me in our office and just watching the game, by myself, and just, I mean, I'm fully locked in on the game. I mean, it's been a while since I've been able to kind of like really kind of lock in and enjoy. But what I really try to do too, honestly, before I used to be like, okay, I got to get like locked in for this game like hours before. But now, I mean, I spend all week and getting ready for it. So I'm like, usually the day of the game, I'm like, I go with my wife and my son. We like go to the farmer's market or something. You know what I mean? I'm like, if I'll watch more games and stuff in between because this is the late game. But if it's like if they're playing at 3:30, a lot of times I'll like only watch like a tiny bit of those noon games because I'm like, I'm gonna be in front of the TV and in front of my computer for the next like 6 hours, and then I'm probably gonna watch the late game stuff after, whatever. Right? Like so, I try to like I don't want to get burnt out from it, so I try to like do non-college football stuff as much as I can until it gets to game time. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I try to I've definitely evolved into someone who watches alone. I think it's kind of similar. Like it's not really working, it's just that I'm taking in the game and I like to process the game from an analytical point of view, right? Like that's what makes me feel kind of better, I guess. That's how I deal with like just kind of being, I don't know, nervous about the outcome, I guess, especially when it's like a big game like this, and the thing is that I have my people that I talk to, right? So like you and Matt, like we'll be chatting, or me and some people in DMs, like we'll be talking about the game that way. And so like I'm kind of immersed in those conversations as the game is going on. So like I don't want a big party. Like I don't want to watch party. I don't want any of that stuff. Like I want to just kind of take it in and analyze the game that way. So before we get into like the Ohio State talk, there's a lot of chatter in the comments about Tyler Buckner's accuracy, right? And it's been a talking point for the last couple weeks, I guess. People are opining about Tyler Buckner and how accurate he is and that sort of thing. And I'll send it over to you in a second to talk about this, but I don't have concerns about this because I don't have a reason to be concerned about this, right? It's not that I don't think it's not that I have this great confidence that he's going to be like a 65, 70% passer or anything like that. It's just that without evidence, like I don't have an opinion. Like, how can anyone have an opinion especially based on last year? Like there's so much different about him, going from, a guy who didn't get starter reps, didn't get backup reps, was just like a niche player in the offense. He wasn't the guy, and he wasn't supposed to be the guy. Like they brought him in to be the running RPO zone read quarterback, right? So he's not working on his passing game all that often. So to me, I'm not really trying to go off of whatever people saw from him in the fall last year in the games and practice. He's a totally different quarterback now. It's like he's gotten starter reps ever since the spring, So I don't know. I don't. And it's like it's famously the media hasn't seen him, right? We haven't. Yeah. The media hasn't seen him in an actual live setting where it's like, okay, everyone's in pads. He's facing like a real pass rush or anything like that. So I don't see how anyone can have a strong opinion either way. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate, like anyone who's saying like, oh, Tyler Buckner was great today based on watching 5 periods of practice, or he was not great. Like, it's you can't really judge based off that, but I guess you could look at it from a perspective. There's like kind of like famously, I remember the practice. It was heading into the 2018 season where. Brandon Wimbush, we were at practice. They were practicing in the stadium that day. And it was like warm-ups basically. Like, they're just throwing like swing passes. And he's like literally like throwing it into the stands. It was bad, right? It was.
And it was wobbly too. That's the other part.
It was like, it was like a yips type of deal. Right?
Yeah.
And you could see it. And you're just like, okay. And if we got out at the first, that was a full practice that day. But if it was only the warm-ups, you could have said that day, you're like, something is wrong here. And nothing like that happened with Buckner. I've been at a practice, not to, or been at a camp, not to rip on our guy, Phil J, even though he can't stop talking about Notre Dame. But Dracovic was at the Elite 11, and Matt and I were there. I was one in Cleveland, and he was like throwing worm burners, like for just straight into the ground for a decent part of the day. And he made some good throws too. But he threw enough. There was enough passes there where you're like, oh, this is like not great. I wasn't gonna ding him for like one bad day, but if you were going to say like, and just based off a day, you'd be like, well, that was bad. And Buckner never had any of those. Right.
Yeah. So it's not that I don't mind. I don't mind people. If someone has a concern, they have a concern. It's fine. I'm just saying that it's not based on evidence recently. Right. So that's what I would say. It's like, you're concerned about something that happened last year. No problem. Like, that's your opinion. Go with your opinion. I think to me, that's fair. But we haven't seen him, especially in camp. There's just not enough there to have a strong opinion either way on that. But I wanted to bring it up since people were talking about it a lot in the comments there. Okay, so let's get into this game. Right, there's a lot going on here. Let's start on for Notre Dame on offense, Ohio State on defense. Like, what are the matchups that you're looking at? Like, what are the key matchups that you think are going to go a long way to deciding who wins this game?
I think the obvious one is Jackson Smith-Njigba, sorry. I think that's how they're going to match up with him. It's critical. They're going to be in 11 personnel. I think you're going to see a decent amount of 10 too. They'll mix in some 12 here and there too, just to keep Notre Dame honest, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of that. And especially when you look at how Notre Dame handled 10 last year. I
Mm.
mean, why wouldn't they? You know, and if you're thinking that Notre Dame's, you know, the weakest part of Notre Dame's defense is the secondary, then you're going to attack them and try to, you know, you have these loaded wideouts. You're going to try to do that. So I think, you know, based on he's obviously a slot. He's in the slot 88.6% of the time last year. I think it's probably going to be, I'd guess it'd be around 80 this year. Maybe it'll be outside a little bit more because there's no Olave and Garrett Wilson. But because of that, like you just can't like Utah. I mean, Utah did a horrible job against them. Obviously, anytime you give up 347 yards to a guy, you do a horrible job. You know, some of those were great plays by him. Some of them was just, I mean, bad defense, right? Bad defense. And so, I mean, Tariq Bracy obviously is going to be a big part of that, but it's not like you can say, Bracy, you got Smith-Njigba this whole game. Like, that's not a matchup anyone's going to win, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I think they're obviously going to have to mix it up. You're going to have to, it's the good thing about playing a slot is you can bracket him in multiple ways, right? You can bracket him kind of like, you know, left, right, obviously, like, you know, deep, shallow. Like you can do different things with bracketing a slot. It's a little bit easier than I think, you know, because you can do it in multiple ways and mix it up, right? So
yeah,
I think you're going to see them mix it up and do quite a bit. And you just don't want to get into a situation where, you know, like in the Oklahoma State game that we featured in that one hidden hustle video, you can't have Jack Kaiser on him. You can't like, and not to pick on Jack Kaiser just because he's a space backer. I'm like you can't have any linebacker on him. Like that's just, you're asking to get burned. Right. And so to me, that's, I mean, a huge key matchup in the game. And then I think after that, I think you look at, I mean, just the receivers in general, but I mean, up front is just, Notre Dame has to beat them up front. Like they have to dominate that matchup. The defensive line, Jason Ademilola talking a big game. Good. I think that's great. Like, you know what? Because that's how most guys think anyways.
Yeah.
He's just saying it out loud. But if you say it, you better back it up. I think, you know, he's a guy who has the potential to back it up. But you need guys like him, Foskey, Cross, Mills, you know, the depth, Lacey, Smith, all these guys, they need to have big games. They need to have big games. I think that's huge. They need to dominate up front and not just a pass rush, because obviously the pass rush is important, but in the run game, right? And I think if you look back where Nebraska, and everyone wants to rip on Nebraska after what happened last week, but if you watch how they played defense against them last year, I mean, they beat them up front. They beat like Ohio State up front, and they handled them pretty well. Like you only give up 26 points against, if their offense was even half decent, they could have had a shot at winning that game, right? So, you know, I think that's the key. You got to stop them up front, hold them to like 3 yards of carry or less, and then obviously you're gonna have numbers that you got to deal with in the secondary.
Yeah. So a couple things on Smith and Njigba, like he caught 85% of his targets last year. That's unbelievable. I mean, especially when he got 112 targets.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like 95 catches on 112. I mean, that's amazing.
And he's like 90%. He was like 90% contested catches too.
Yeah. Like he's really good. So for me, like, and especially with you talking about the running game, like tackling is such a big thing in this game. Because the other part about Smith-Njigba is he 790 yards of his total yards were yards after catch, right? So it's not that he's catching passes, it's that he's breaking tackles, and then once he breaks tackles, like he's in the open, now he's a real problem for you, you know. And so that's part of it too, and that's part of bracketing him, not just preventing the catch, but also rallying to the ball and getting him down, right? Hitting and hustling, you know, that's a big part of it too. I think one thing that I didn't really, you know, we don't follow Ohio State, right? So you think about their receivers, and you know, Marvin Harrison and Julian Flammang, and Emeka, what's his last name?
Egbuka.
Egbuka, yeah. You think about those guys, and you know they're talented, right? They're very highly ranked coming out of high school, right? So these are big pedigree for these guys. Not a ton of work though last year, right? Like the most of all the three of those guys, the most targets they had was 20. You know, that was Julian Flammang had 20. I think it was Marvin Harrison had 19. Egbuka had 10. You know, so look, talented players. I project, you know, and I think we all project that they're going to be good, right? It's not that you know, they're unproven. They are unproven, but it's like
they might not be. They're not going to be at their peak. Is that what you're like? That's how I'm kind of view it. Too.
Yeah, like that's that you know, they haven't. They're not proven players yet, right? And so there's something to that, right? Now you're the guy, right? So I think that's a big part of this too. We have a question here. This is a good question. Do you guys anticipate any issues with defense similar to the FSU game, Freeman's first game versus Golden's first game?
I mean, I don't think not issues similar to that FSU game, because I mean, there could be issues in this game, but I think it'll be more predicated based on the
opponent
talent
base.
Yeah, opponent and what they're having to do. I think in that game, I think you know, I think it was a little bit of a rude awakening for Marcus Freeman, where he was like, we're at Cincinnati, he'd be like, all right, let's go dollar and then solve all our problems. And it was like, that's not solving your problems, because they didn't have the personnel to really do it. And they really didn't have the personnel all year to match up with any kind of why teams didn't play 10 against them the whole year. Probably because they didn't have the personnel on offense, but teams should have done that the whole year. That was when the game flipped. And then obviously they just didn't have a good response to that. And I think with Golden, I think the one thing that I loved from the very first thing that he said when he got hired was talking about in the NFL how adjustments aren't wait till halftime, because that's college, right? And certainly high school and stuff too. Like that's for the most part, right? It's series to series, and that's the way it's got to be. And I think because of Golden and that kind of thing, like, yeah, I think there's chances you might see a wrinkle where you're like, oh wow, like they really hit Notre Dame bad on that series, and then you're going to see an adjustment to that, and it'll be a lot quicker. If they just don't have the dudes to handle Ohio State suits, so be it. But I don't think it'll be like a coaching thing,
right? And I think part of the difference too is I think the adjustment from Clark Lee to Freeman is much steeper than the adjustment from Freeman to Golden, right? I think they're running similar stuff. They're running multiple things in terms of like multiple fronts and all that stuff, right? Like they talk about being multiple all the time. So I don't think the scheme adjustment is as steep, right? And so that's when, like, it's not just the FSU game. To me, the kind of the way I see it is going from FSU to Ohio State, like there was 13 games there, right? Where it's like, okay, you had a chance to kind of get used to the defense and get used to the personnel and that sort of thing. Like Freeman, he's not calling the plays, but he knows the personnel a lot better than he did, you know, against Florida State, right? So that was a big problem. I am a little bit concerned about the preparation going into it, just about how physical they were. Like Freeman talks about how physical they were, like in the first couple weeks. But like Cam Hart, right? Like hasn't gotten a ton of work, you know, didn't really do anything in the spring because of his shoulder. And then they've been kind of holding him out for camp stuff. I think he's going to be fine to play, but it's like, he hasn't gotten a ton of reps, right? He hasn't gotten a ton of work. Same thing with Marist. You know, I just feel like maybe they haven't been as physical, especially because they can't be super physical because the offense doesn't have a ton of depth either, right? Like you don't want to get those guys hurt. So I am a little bit concerned about that. That's just based on comments, right? Like just kind of reading between the lines. I mean, how do you feel about that? Like, do you have any concern as far as prep and how intense things have been?
No, I actually kind of feel the opposite, actually.
Really?
Because I think that was the way to do it, how they did it, like in terms of like kind of beating the crap out of them in the first couple weeks and then backing down. And obviously there's guys that were out, and you kind of had to go back, take it down a notch.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you kind of have to establish, like, this is who we got to be, and this is how physical we got to be early. And you can't just ramp it up late, because then that's how you get guys injured, and then they don't play in the game, right? So I think that's.
I mean, if you do want to scale back, like it's tapering, basically, is what it would be referred to, right? So, look, if you don't have a concern about it, you were there, so that you would have a better idea of it.
Well, I just think too, like, one of those things is like, I mean, Greg, like once you get into the season, I mean, yeah, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, you practice hard, right? Like, those are hard practices, physical practices, mostly, but like, you're already, like, camp, the level of intensity of like day 5 of camp compared to like, a Wednesday in the middle of October. The focus is probably better, right? But the intensity is not the same, because you can't be at that level then, right? Because you have to have that level ready for Saturdays, right? So, so I think, it's kind of like smart to do it that way, because I think if you kind of were doing it where you're ramping up, you have a chance of kind of burning out.
Yeah.
Before you get to the finish
line. It wasn't the plan. It was how physical were they really in the first couple weeks. That was my kind of concern, right?
I think a lot of guys got concussed, so I think
that did happen. That is a true fact. So hopefully, look, if it is true that they really did whip their butts, then I don't have concerns on that end, right? So good. That makes me feel better. All right, let's do a question from CMAC. How much input will Al Washington and Laurinaitis have to keep Ohio State offense in check?
Just in terms of their knowledge of,
I think so, because for especially on Laurinaitis too. I don't think he's been around. Has he been around the Ohio State program?
No, he hasn't.
Al Washington definitely would have some input in terms of.
He's going to have some personnel input for sure, right? But obviously, it's a new defense,
right?
But believe me, like, he's going to be like, I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just throwing out a name here. If he's like Paris Johnson soft or something, right? I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying if one of those guys, pick a name, is soft, or this guy's this, or like, if you do this to this guy, like whatever on those offensive line, he's seen those guys for a lot, like in practices. He knows the guys on offense. He knows the guys on defense. He knows the personnel. So he's going to be able to say, like, this guy's legit. This is how you beat this guy, whatever. Like, yeah, that stuff is valuable. It is valuable. So, I think some of that is, a lot of that is like, in the scouting report kind of deal, not like a stuff that they're going to say on game day or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe they are like, I doubt there's going to be like, I doubt how much does like Al Washington like know their signals or something like that on offense? Like, probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not a thing. I will say that James Laurinaitis, I think, is actually could be the kind of guy that, not just based on knowledge on Ohio State, but just in terms of like a guy who's like, that guy is, look at the way he's leaning when he pulls. Like, he's the kind of guy who would notice these things, like where it might pick up a couple tells that could really help them during the game. So I wonder, I don't know if he's going to be on the sideline, because Golden's going to be on the sideline. So he might be up.
I thought I read he was good. He might be a booth guy.
I think he'd be a valuable booth guy.
Yeah.
So, I know Chris O'Leary's going to be in the booth. So, but I think he'd be a very valuable guy to have up there. So, we'll see what kind of value he brings, but I'm I'm something to think about for sure.
All right. All right. Offense. Notre Dame on offense. Ohio State on defense. I mean, the tackles, right? I mean, Alton Fisher, right? Are they going to win? I feel like if they're going to win, I feel like Notre Dame has a big chance. I mean, I just like, to me, you go into a game, and I said it on one of the videos too. If you went up front, like if you knew Notre Dame was going to win on defense up front and Notre Dame was going to win on offense up front, you wouldn't think it would be a 17-point gap, right? Like you just wouldn't think that. So and what do you think the likelihood of that? Like, to me, it's better than 50-50, in my opinion. I think Notre Dame could be the two better units up front. Like, what do you think about that?
I definitely think that could happen. I think the reason why you don't just why it's not like a foregone conclusion is because, like, you look at how they've recruited, and especially on the defensive line, and like they got a bunch of 5-stars. You know what I mean? Like, they got a bunch of dudes
on Ohio State,
right? Yeah. So, like, and that's why you're like, because really, they're a lot on the defensive line is very similar to the receiver group, where you mentioned about this guy only had 10 targets, this guy had 20 targets. Like, they don't have a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
Like Jack Sawyer. I mean, I think Jack Sawyer, I was super duper high on him. Obviously, he was like a top 5 player in the class, like in his class the previous year. But I mean, he hasn't really played a lot. So, I mean, he might come in and light the world on fire and like have like 3 sacks in this game, but he might be like not there yet, you know, like in terms of going against, you know, this. My guess is he's probably closer to the 3 sack guy than he is not, but there's, you know, you still got to go out of there and do it, right? So, I think, I think because of that, that's why I think people see the wideouts, they see the offense, whatever, and that's why the spread is where it's at. But I mean, just let's be honest. Like, Ohio State, when I think of Ohio State, I think of speed, I think of skill. I don't think tough, like physical, like of their interior, even though they've had good linemen on both sides of the ball, but I don't think of them. That's not been their identity. And I think that's like Notre Dame. That's going to be their identity. It has been their identity under Kelly, and why it's been that. And I think if you look at it, where I think Notre Dame has a chance to be really, really good on both sides of the ball front. And the tackles right there, like you mentioned too, like those guys are just huge in this game. They have to be great.
Ohio State's been bullied before.
Yes,
it's happened, last year. You know, like there's like, look, it's funny too, because I've said it a few times. Like, Notre Dame is only their losses and none of their wins, and Ohio State is only their wins and none of their losses. Like, Notre Dame got thrown on against Oklahoma State, right? And that happened, and okay, that's fine, you know. And that leads people to believe, like, all right, their secondary is going to be vulnerable against Ohio State. Okay, that's fair. But, you know, like, Ohio State got run on a number of times. They got run on early against Oregon. They got run on late against Michigan. And then Utah was giving it to them as well. And Utah
did run it on them. Yeah.
Right. So to me, it's like, okay, they have a weakness too that they have to answer for. Now, I understand that they have a new defensive coordinator and everything, and that's great. But it's not like Jim Knowles came in and was the, you know, he immediately turned around Oklahoma State. It took him 3 or 4 years to really get things going there. So to me, it's like, it's not, you can't just come in and be a scheme guy, right? You can't. You need to get your players up to speed on that. You need to get used to your players.
How physical were they in camp? How would it, like, we don't know some of these questions. They give even less access than Notre Dame gives. So like, a lot of that kind of stuff too. Like, are they, do they know that they got to be at a certain level there? Because I mean, Ohio State isn't open. They're usually opening with Akron. You know what I mean? They're not opening with Notre Dame very often. So they had to approach it different too. But just kind of building on that thing. And I mentioned this in the scouting report on ISD this week on Ohio State, and also in Six Thoughts this morning. So in their, like you said, they're everyone picks out Ohio State's wins as things. So in their wins, 6.5 yards per carry on offense. On defense, they only gave up 2.93 yards per carry.
Yeah.
Well, in the losses, they only rushed for 3.1 and they gave up 7.16. So, I mean, yes, it's a different team. It's a new defense coordinator, all this kind of stuff. But like, I mean, that was the recipe last year, was like, you know, if you can run the ball on them, like you dominate on that side of thing, like stop the run the ball. That was the recipe to beat them. And, you know, that's what it is. And like I said, in Six Thoughts too, if Notre Dame gets in a track meet, if they think this is going to be a shootout and they're going to try to go explosive play for explosive play with Ohio State, they're going to lose 10 times out of 10. I never know. This is a pet peeve of mine. Why do people say 9 times out of 10 when they mean 10 times out of 10? They mean every time. You don't say 9 times. They mean every time. So they're going to lose every time if they try to play that game. If they want to make this, if the game's going to be 40-45, Ohio State's going to win.
Yeah.
If the game is 32-28, now the odds of Notre Dame winning the game are much greater, because Notre Dame has to make it a 12-round slugfest where fourth quarter in the later rounds, Notre Dame's like, we're the more physical team. It's like, oh, you want the ball back? Like, well, we're going 4-minute-0 here, and we're driving on you for 7.5 minutes and scoring to close this game. Right. So I think that is kind of the recipe for Notre Dame, and it's been done. So it's not like it's not just like one team that has done it either. It was multiple teams. Yeah.
Right. It's over and over, you know? So or not over and over, but it's multiple times. Right. So it's not like it can't happen. You know, people, and I think that's the thing that, like, what's the common thread between like Oregon and Michigan and even Utah to some extent, right? Those are teams that have the beef, and they recruit like big boys up front, right? And Utah is very good developmentally up front, right? They've been physical 5 years. Yeah. So like anytime Ohio State goes up against a team that has the guys up front, right? Because like, you know, there's a saying in baseball, right? Like X player hits bad pitching, right? Well, like Ohio State, like they'll feast on anyone who can't recruit with them and play with them up front, right? Like that is a thing that they'll do, right? But then you get in a game against Oregon, who recruits big boys up front, against Michigan, who recruits big boys up front, against Utah, same thing. That's where they'll have problems, right? And it doesn't mean that they'll lose every time, but it is an issue for them. So, you know, I just think people overlook the fact that Notre Dame is a big boy school when it comes to upfront players. I want to get to a question from Bass and Domer about RPOs. I assume you're talking about RPOs here.
Yeah, I think he's talking about RPOs.
Yeah. How big a percentage will RPOs be to the Notre Dame's offense this game?
I mean, how much overall are they going to do that? Like,
I mean, maybe not percentage. Like, do you think it's going to be like a really big part of the game plan?
I think it'll be a pretty good chunk. I'm going to guess like there's going to be like probably like, because I it's something like I track after games and stuff, and I would say later last year, and this is, you know, even with Jack Cohn, not just Tyler Buckner, you know, they were about like probably like 7 to 10 RPO pass attempts per game at the end of the year. My guess is it'll probably be more in the 10 to 12 range in this game, which is quite a few, right? That's quite a few. So like if you're throwing, like, I think if you're looking at Buckner and say he throws 12, on they were run pass option calls. I mean, he might throw only like 12 straight dropbacks on top of that. Like, I don't think he's going to throw 30 times in this game. I think it's probably going to be closer to 25. So, yeah. So I think a good chunk of their passing game is going to be that.
I mean, to me, that's how you negate someone loading the box. Right?
Yes.
Like people talk about like, oh no, load the box, make Tyler Buckner beat you, right? Well, that doesn't mean, oh, you're gonna load the box. Okay, I guess we'll drop back and I'm gonna do a 5-step drop and I'm gonna pick out my receiver. Like, no, if you go 8 in the box or you load the box or whatever, okay, well then we're gonna get Tyler Buckner on the edge. And we're just going to negate all those guys inside. Like all these people inside, they have nothing to do because we can just pull it and either run with Buckner or we can throw it outside. We can throw like a bubble. We can do all those things, right?
Now RPO, play action. Yeah.
Yeah. So now the numbers are completely on your side. So like to me, there's been a lot of talk about Ohio State loading up the box. Like, please do. Like that's I would love for nothing more than that, right? For the safety to be close and all that stuff, because that's the value of Tyler Buckner, right? Like that's why you want him on your roster. That's why you want him to be the quarterback. That's why you name him starting quarterback a week into camp, because you can work on those types of things, right? Like people tried to load the box against Brandon Wimbush, who wasn't, speaking of accuracy, who wasn't very accurate, but he could kill you because of his legs and because of what teams have to look at him. Teams load the box all the time. So it's to me, please, like a lot of RPOs, a lot of those things are going to be a big part of the game plan. What do you think? So you had talked about prior to recording, we talked about this yesterday. Like, what do you think Notre Dame is going to see from the Ohio State defense and what they can install from Jim Knowles? Like, there's been a lot of talk about, we've only got 70% of the game plan or the playbook installed or whatever. And, to me, like quotes, I don't know how much I read into quotes.
I always think that's a bunch of BS, but
they keep saying it. And it is true, right? Like you can't install everything, right? Like, that's just kind of common
same
sense.
for Notre Dame as well. Yeah.
Right. So what do you think is going to be different about Ohio State in this game versus what Notre Dame saw against Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl?
Well, one, I think you're going to see more of just them rushing 4, because they have the guys that they have more guys that can win those kind of matchups rushing 4. So I think that is what you're going to see more than, I mean, you'll still see, some 5 and 6 man pressures, but like, I would guess less than you would have seen in that Oklahoma State game. I think my guess is they'll probably play a little bit less like man to man.
Interesting.
I think they'll kind of mix it up a bit more, because one, they want to confuse Tyler Buckner. And of course they can show something that looks like man and turns into matchup zone, whatever, right? But like, I think they want to do that. They want to try to confuse Buckner, make him, make him think, make him hesitate. So I think you're going to see probably more of that. I think so. I think also too, you might see like more drop 8 with like a spy than you could see, you would definitely saw against Oklahoma State. So I think they're going to be a little bit less aggressive.
So that's the opposite of loading the box, then dropping 8.
Dropping 8. I mean, on like, it says 3rd and 7, drop 8.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Like, I don't think they're going to be like first down, drop 8. Like, I do think you're going to see a lot of, the safeties are going to be active, very active on early downs. I imagine that. And they'll have a lot of they'll run blitz a lot, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's going to be as much of like just a hunch. Not that I think, because I think everybody thinks young quarterback, pressure, right? Attack, pressure. Let's make whatever. And really, I think it's almost like you just more want to just do something to cause indecision. So maybe you see like more like zone dog stuff and like where they're rushing for it, but maybe they're dropping a guy out and whatever, and like that kind of thing than anything else.
Yeah. So I posted in the Keys to Victory, Keys to Victory on YouTube. And if you haven't checked that out, please check it out. I think it's really good. First down is such a big deal for Notre Dame in this game. Like you don't want to be behind the sticks in this one. You like the success rate. Like to me, if we were to pick out like one thing that was on like offense or defense that would like be indicative of how the outcome was going to go, like tell me early down success rate for Notre Dame. I think if it's high, then I think Notre Dame's a business, because then you're playing the game on your terms at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like if they're in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 all the time or a lot, that's not, you're not playing on your terms. That's not playing to your strengths. The strengths of this team is not 3rd and 8. It's going to be
if it's 3rd and 4 or less, you have the full menu to choose from.
And you can still do the things that you
Buckner,
want.
Yeah, you can do all these things.
Right. Like you can't sit in 12 personnel or whatever on 3rd and 8. You can't, that's when you bring in, you're almost de-emphasizing, the offensive line at that point. Not to say that 3rd and 8 means they're doomed, but if it's a consistent thing, I just don't think that's.
It's just hard. It's just what it is. Take the numbers for what they are. Like it's a lot harder to convert 3rd and 8 than it is 3rd and 4.
Yeah. What's more important, Buckner's arms or the legs? Like to me, all of it. He's the quarterback. You know, like it's all important. You can't. You can't have one without the other, in my opinion. In a big game, especially like his brain. That's what's more important. Like
knowing when to run, knowing when to pull it, and being like knowing when to like I'm scrambling here. Oh, I see a guy open. I can, make one of these off-platform throws on the run, and knowing when the seas have parted. I got to run here. I can get 30 yards here. And man, I don't envy him at all. I don't envy any quarterback. Those are hard decisions to make. In a split second. Right. So, but yeah, all of it I think is the way to approach it.
But so to me, it's the decision-making piece. The arms and the legs they're both dangerous. It's just that you have to know when, like when people talk about accuracy and stuff like the decision-making plays into that, because when you are making the right read and you're making the right decision, then you're finding open receivers, and it's easier to throw to open receivers, right? Or it's easier to throw when you have a good grasp of where the ball needs to go, right? It's not that he's inaccurate, like mechanically. It's that when you are a first-time starter and you're not totally sure, then that's going to affect everything, right? So that's where the inaccuracy concerns come from, not because of his mechanics. Like I think his mechanics have looked better than they've looked ever at Notre Dame right now, but that's in a warm-up period. You have to account for the fact that it's different when there's live bullets and you have to make decisions that affect the game. That weighs on a quarterback. It just takes a little bit of time. So that's the thing. It's his brain. It's not his legs or his arm. They're all important, but decision-making is the thing. So here's the thing, right? I know Buckner is a first-time starter, but man, he is such a mature, calm guy, like Ian Book level of relaxed and level-headed. Okay, let's take that at face value, right? Yes. Ian Book didn't make the best decisions ever. The guy was a 3-year starter, 5th-year guy. He didn't always know.
Throw the ball away, Ian.
Yeah, he didn't always
Don't run out of bounds for a 2-yard own sack.
Right. So that's the point, right?
Yeah.
You can be level-headed. Look, and I'll remember this forever. In 2017, in the preseason, Brandon Wimbush was the best interview you ever heard. You listen to that guy talk, and it's like, man, he gets it. He is ready. He is the man who's going to lead us to
Still
the thing.
interviews just now, and you're like, this guy could be president.
Yeah,
He's one of those guys. Yeah.
super confident, like relaxed and everything. Gets in the game, it goes different, right? So
Yes,
it's just you don't know until you get out there, and the decision making piece, you just don't know it, and that's one of the things that no one is sure about. Because I can look at his high school film, we can watch him in practice, we can watch all these things. We don't know what it is when he's the man at Ohio State and that sort of thing. We have hopes, I hope he's that guy, and Marcus Freeman calls him an alpha male, and that's great, but we do that's the one I guess big variable. And speaking of variables, as we get close to wrapping up here, what is for you the one unknown that's an intangible to you, or in some way? You don't even have to put the caveat as intangible, whatever. What is the one unknown thing? It's like, if you knew the answer to X, then you would feel a lot better about Notre Dame's chances in this game.
I think you'd probably have to say the Buckner piece of it, really, right?
Yeah.
Like that would probably be at the top of the list. Just like, yeah, how's he going to react? Because he's not going to go out there and pitch a perfect game, right? So how's he going to react when he throws a ball that, maybe gets picked or should have been picked or something like that, right? Or he goes 3 and out 2 series in a row, right?
Yeah.
How's he going to react to that? Because I think that was the one thing that, if you look at that Virginia Tech game, and he was great in that game, and for a lot of that game, right? And he had the 2-minute drill. There was a lot of throws he made there, right? But he threw the couple bad picks in that game, right?
Yeah.
And it would have been phenomenal if he had the chance to go back out, and then he was the guy instead of Jack Cohn that end up leading them back and winning the game. But he didn't get that opportunity, so you didn't get to kind of see him like the hype meter it would have exploded if that would have happened. But that's what you didn't know, because you didn't see him respond to adversity within the game.
Yeah.
Like that. And that is unknown. So how's he going to respond when things are going to go bad in the game? Because it's a roller coaster, right? Like there's one thing you can 100% say about Ian Book. Fumbles the ball basically going into the end zone against Clemson, right? It would have sealed the game. All right. They fumble, and then has to go down, try to score there, right? Makes the PI call on Dabo complained, whatever, right? I hope you have a great time, crazy boy.
Yep.
Yeah, enjoy it. Dabo, it's called, they're 4th down, throws a ball, great, really good ball to Ben Skowronek, drops it, 4th down. It's like, I don't think Notre Dame's going to get the ball back. Like, this is like, that could be it. And you're like, that is going to weigh, this fumble is going to weigh on Ian Book for the rest of his life. He's going to think about this.
Yeah.
Nope, they get the ball back. He gets another chance, comes back down. Avery Davis, big play, go down. They score. Obviously, what happens. They win the game, right? But it's like, you got to see that in real time of like, here's this. And then also you got to see like that, he had numerous of those games. You don't win 30 plus games in Notre Dame without doing like, the Virginia Tech game in 2019, et cetera, right? So you saw these kind of things. It happened, and you haven't seen it yet with Buckner. And it's kind of like the true measure of a quarterback, in my opinion, when you see that and see how a guy handles adversity and deals with that stuff.
Yeah, that's I think it would be good to know how that's gonna go on Buckner's end. So for me, But people are always talking about the Freeman factor, right? And it's usually about recruiting. It's usually a recruiting kind of thing, right? Like he is very active on the recruiting trail and that sort of thing. But now he's a coach, and we want him to what is the impact that he has as a head coach and not as a coordinator doing X and O stuff, right? And for me, I think it is, can he get his team to not just believe that they're going to win, right? Because I feel like we've heard for like 20 years, like, oh, we went into this game and we knew we could win, or we knew we would win. We didn't just believe it or whatever. Like, to me, it's like, do they believe and know in their hearts that they're better? Do they know that they're better? Like, do they think that they are the better team walking on the field that day? Like, do they truly believe that? And that goes into the Jason Adamilola thing, right? Like, this is something that we can't know, is like, do you believe that you're better? Not just that you'll win, but that you're actually better than them. The national champions are walking into the shoe on Saturday and they're wearing gold helmets. Like, do they believe that to be the case? That's the thing that Freeman needs to get them to.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's been there. It's always about like, oh, we believe we can win. We actually believe we can win this game. It's like, no, do you believe you're actually the better team going into it? Because you play different when you believe that, when you truly believe that. And that's the Freeman factor that I want to know about. Like, yes, I do think that, right? I think that is what Jay is saying. It's like, I believe every team. Well, this is perfect. I think we have Ade Adamilola in the chat watching the show. First of all, thank you very much. They do believe this, I know. So if that is true, I'll take it. I'll take the man at his word. If that is true, then I would honestly, I do believe that Notre Dame will win this game if they truly believe that.
Yeah, you can't go and win this game unless you have that feeling. So that's why I was like 100% all in on what Jason was saying. Like, I know people like, he doesn't have to say it, whatever. No. If you don't believe that, you got no chance. You got no chance. You can't win the game without thinking that way. That's just the way it is.
To me, that's been like the one I titled this the missing piece. Like, to me, that is the step. Do you truly believe it? Because if they do, and if that's what Marcus Freeman can give them, right, is that confidence, right? Like, we are better. It's not just that we're going to win; it's that we're better.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do it. And to me, I think that is the one thing that the media and the narrative makers and all those other things, they kind of miss, is like Notre Dame. Look, Ohio State is a talented roster, and that's true. Okay, Notre Dame is not bringing a bunch of slouches to this game. They're not. They have some real talent that Ohio State needs to worry about. I think that part it's been overlooked, and I just think there's the mental aspect for Notre Dame, and if it's there, and Mr. Adamilola says it's there, and they believe it, and if that's true, I truly believe that Notre Dame will win this game. I do. Yeah, I really believe that.
That's a good way to finish us off. I think that is.
Do you want to give it? I'll tell you right now. I think it's going to be 28-27 Notre Dame. That is my prediction.
20. Okay.
28-27. It's going to be. They're going to hold them.
I am not going to give my prediction now, because we have our predictions going live on Friday. So I won't. I'll save it for that. But you'll see my prediction then. But Greg, 28-27 Irish.
28-27 Notre Dame. So we'll end it there. There. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Christopher Phillips disagrees. That's fine. I wouldn't expect. I assume you're a Ohio State fan.
I think he jumped in right at the end.
Yeah. So that's fine. It's possible or whatever. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Mr. Adamilola, for tuning in. I really appreciate that. Everyone, check out all the stuff on Irish Sports Daily, the YouTube channel. You know what? Thank you for coming regardless. I appreciate that. You know what? No problem. Good luck on Saturday. Someone's going to be happy and someone's not. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Irish Sports Daily YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Thank you for joining us early in the morning. If you're on the West Coast, especially. Hopefully next week we can do this when I've had a little bit more sleep and that sort of thing. We're getting a lot of predictions. Everyone thinks Notre Dame's going to win. Yay. So, yeah, we'll, check out the, when are the predictions going up on the site, Jamie?
Friday
predictions.
Yeah.
Friday predictions, 2 days out. Good luck, everybody. Go Irish. We'll talk to you very, very soon.